I am Oakley, 28 years old, standing frozen in my parents' living room as the Christmas tree lights cast shadows across their faces. My heart sinks as they hand every gift to my sister Autumn, while my father's words cut through the festive air. You did not earn anything this year. I bite my lip and nod, but that night I pack a single suitcase. 1 year later, as they gather around that same tree, their television screen flickers to life, with my face staring back at them from the national spotlight. If you are watching this video right now, I would love to know where you are viewing from. Please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and let me know in the comments if you have ever had to walk away from something toxic to find your true worth. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston, I always felt like the shadow in our family portrait. Our two-story colonial house on Maple Street looked picture-perfect from the outside, with its red brick facade and white trim. But within those walls, the dynamics were anything but balanced. My father, Richard, 58, built his reputation as a cutthroat corporate lawyer who never lost a case. His imposing 6'2" frame and perpetually furrowed brow made him intimidating even on his best days. He carried himself with the rigid posture of someone who believed rules were sacred, except when it came to how he treated his daughters. My mother, Diana, 55, worked as an elementary school teacher, beloved by her students, but mysteriously unable to extend that same nurturing spirit equally at home. With her perfectly styled blonde hair and collection of tasteful pearl jewelry, she was the epitome of New England propriety. Then there was my sister, Autumn, 23, with her effortless beauty and carefree personality. 5 years younger than me, she floated through life on a cloud of charm and spontaneity. While I inherited our father's serious brown eyes and analytical mind, Autumn got our mother's golden hair and social grace. This difference seemed to determine our worth in the family hierarchy from the beginning. Oakley thinks too much, my mother would say with a laugh when relatives visited. But our Autumn, she lights up a room just by walking in. These casual comments stacked up over the years like bricks in an invisible wall between me and the family's affection. The pattern of favoritism was subtle at first. When I was 12 and brought home straight A grades, my father nodded and said, "As expected." When Autumn brought home C's and a single B+ in art class, there was a celebration dinner at her favorite restaurant. Not everyone needs to be academic to be successful, my mother explained while ordering Autumn's favorite chocolate cake. I threw myself into achievement, thinking if I just accomplished enough, they would see me. High school valedictorian, full scholarship to Boston University, graduating summa cum laude with a business degree. Each milestone met with the same tepid response. Well, that is what Oakley does. She is the responsible one. Our family home transformed each December into a winter wonderland. Mom spent weeks perfecting the decorations, from the hand-sewn stockings on the fireplace to the angel-top tree surrounded by presents wrapped in coordinating paper. Christmas music played constantly. Cookies baked in batches, and the scent of pine and cinnamon created an atmosphere that magazines tried to capture in glossy spreads. Christmas mornings from my childhood held memories that highlighted the imbalance in our home. When I was 10, I received a set of encyclopedias, while Autumn got a beautiful dollhouse I had secretly wished for. At 16, my gift was a practical laptop for schoolwork, while Autumn unwrapped a guitar she had mentioned wanting just once. I told myself it made sense. I needed academic tools. Autumn needed encouragement for her creative side. Despite everything, I loved my sister. Autumn never asked for the preferential treatment, and sometimes I caught glimpses of her discomfort with it. Like the time when I was 20 and received a gift card to a bookstore while she got diamond earrings. She tried to share them with me later that night, whispering, "These are too much, Oakley. You should have gotten something special too." But the damage was done through years of consistent messages. Autumn was the treasure, I was the workhorse. I was expected to excel without recognition, while she was celebrated for simply existing. Mom and Dad held me to standards that would have crushed Autumn, yet they never acknowledged the double standard. They expected me to forge a sensible, lucrative career path, while encouraging Autumn to find herself and explore her passions without pressure. I built my identity around being the responsible daughter, the achiever, the one who never complained. Maybe if I became successful enough, accomplished enough, perfect enough, They would finally see me with the same eyes they looked at Autumn. That hope kept me going through college and into my first corporate job, even as the emotional distance grew wider every year. The year before that fateful Christmas marked a turning point in my life. After 6 years at Franklin Financial Services, where I had climbed from analyst to senior investment advisor, the company announced massive layoffs following a merger. Despite my performance reviews consistently rating me in the top 10%, my position was eliminated. 20% of the staff received the same news that Friday afternoon in November. I sat in my apartment that weekend, staring at the severance package details, when an unexpected feeling washed over me. Relief. The crushing pressure of the 60-hour work weeks, the constant stress of market fluctuations, the competitive office politics, none of it had ever brought me joy. I had chosen the path to please my father, to be the daughter he expected me to be. That Monday morning, instead of immediately updating my resume for similar positions, I called Jordan, a college friend who worked at the Boston Herald. We met for coffee, and I confessed something I had never told anyone. I have always wanted to be a journalist, to tell stories that matter. Jordan looked surprised. Why did you go into finance then? Because that is what my father expected. Something practical, profitable, prestigious. The next day, Jordan helped me apply for an entry-level position at the paper. The pay was less than half of my previous salary, but for the first time in years, I felt genuine excitement about my career. When I called my parents to share the news, their reaction was swift and harsh. "You are throwing away your education," my father said, his voice sharp with disappointment. Journalism. In this economy, they are laying off reporters left and right. My mother sighed into the phone. "Honey, you have always been so sensible. This sounds like something Autumn would do, not you." That comparison stung worse than their disapproval. When Autumn dropped out of community college to pursue fashion design, my parents bought her a sewing machine and converted the guest room into a studio. When I lost my finance job and chose to pursue journalism, I was being irresponsible. "I thought you would be supportive," I said quietly. "Support means telling you when you are making a mistake," my father replied. "Come home for Thanksgiving next week. We will discuss better options." During Thanksgiving dinner, Autumn excitedly shared news about a small fashion show featuring 2 of her designs. My parents beamed with pride, asking detailed questions about the event. When the conversation turned to me, my father immediately suggested connections at other financial firms. "I am not looking for another finance position," I explained. "I start at the Herald next Monday." "As what?" "The coffee girl," he asked with a dismissive laugh. "As a research assistant for the business section," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "That sounds wonderful, dear," my mother said without enthusiasm before quickly changing the subject. The next month was a whirlwind of adjustment. My new role was challenging in different ways than finance had been. I worked longer hours for less money, but each day brought new learning experiences. My first byline on a small article about local business trends gave me more satisfaction than any investment portfolio I had ever managed. I called my parents weekly, hoping their attitude would soften, but each conversation ended the same way. My father would ask if I had come to my senses yet, while my mother would gently suggest I was going through a phase. Meanwhile, Autumn received a small bank loan with my parents as co-signers to open an online boutique for her designs. "We have to nurture her creativity," my mother explained when I asked about it. "Not everyone can be as naturally disciplined as you." December arrived, and despite the tension, I hoped the holiday spirit might soften my parents' hearts. I had published several articles by then, including an interview with a local entrepreneur that received positive feedback from readers. I printed copies to show my family, hoping for even a small acknowledgement of my new path. As Christmas approached, subtle comments from my mother during our phone calls made it clear that my career change had deeply disappointed them. "Your father had such high hopes for you," she said once, sighing. "Just try not to mention the newspaper job too much when you visit. You know how he gets." I arrived at my parents' house on Christmas Eve with a mix of hope and dread swirling in my stomach. Through the front window, I could see the perfect decorations, the magnificent tree, and my family gathered in the warm light. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be different. The snowfall created a picturesque scene, as I walked up the shoveled path to my childhood home. Multicolored lights outlined the roof and windows, and a wreath adorned with red berries hung on the front door. The familiar scent of cinnamon and roasted turkey greeted me as I stepped inside, shaking snowflakes from my coat. "Oakley, you made it." Autumn rushed to hug me, her smile genuine and warm. At least one person was happy to see me. My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a festive apron. "There you are. Dinner is almost ready." Her kiss on my cheek felt perfunctory, lacking the enthusiasm she had shown Autumn moments before when I watched through the window. My father remained in his armchair, newspaper in hand, offering only a nod in my direction. "Traffic bad?" he asked without looking up. "Not too bad," I replied, setting down my overnight bag and the gift-wrapped packages I had brought. The Christmas Eve dinner tradition in our family had always been elaborate. The dining table stretched with turkey ham, sweet potato casserole, green beans with almonds, cranberry sauce, and fresh rolls. Crystal glasses sparkled in the candlelight, and the good china only used for special occasions adorned each place setting. Conversation flowed around mundane topics at first. The unusual warmth before the snowstorm, Aunt Patricia's hip replacement, the neighbor's excessive holiday lighting display. I waited for someone to ask about my new career, the articles I had written, the interviews I had conducted. No one did. "So, Autumn," my father said, cutting into his turkey with precision, "tell Oakley about the boutique. Sales are really picking up, right?" Autumn glanced at me apologetically before answering. "Yeah, the holiday season has been good. I sold out of those embroidered scarves last week." "She has real talent," my mother added, beaming, "a natural eye for design." "That is wonderful," I said, sincerely happy for my sister's success. "And she is already breaking even," my father announced proudly. "Pretty impressive for a business less than 6 months old." I took a deep breath and decided to share my own news. I had a feature article published last week, an interview with the founder of that tech startup that just received major funding. My mother nodded distractedly while passing the cranberry sauce. "That is nice, dear." "Just temporary, right?" my father asked, his tone making clear his opinion. "Until you find something suitable in your actual field." "I am in my field," I replied quietly. "Journalism is what I want to do." He set down his fork with a clink against fine china. "Writing little articles is not a career, Oakley, not for someone with your education and potential." "Richard," my mother warned softly, glancing at Autumn, clearly wanting to avoid conflict on Christmas Eve. "No, Diana. She needs to hear this." He turned his full attention to me for the first time that evening. "You had everything going for you. 6 figures at 30 was within reach. Now what? Chasing celebrities for quotes. Begging for interviews with people who actually succeeded in business." The room fell silent, except for the soft instrumental Christmas music playing in the background. Autumn stared at her plate. My mother fiddled with her napkin, and I sat there, a knot forming in my throat, wondering why I had expected anything different. After dinner, we moved to the living room for the tradition of opening one gift each on Christmas Eve. The tree stood majestically in the corner, adorned with ornaments collected over decades, many handmade by Autumn and me as children. Beneath it, presents wrapped in coordinating paper were arranged artfully. My father took charge, as he always did, selecting which gifts would be opened. He handed Autumn a medium-sized box wrapped in silver paper. "This one has your name on it," he said with a smile. Autumn unwrapped a beautiful leather portfolio case for her design sketches. "This is perfect," she exclaimed, genuinely delighted. "Thank you so much." My mother beamed. "We thought it would help you look more professional at meetings with suppliers." I waited patiently, expecting my father to select a gift for me next. Instead, he reached for another package with Autumn's name. "Since you have been working so hard on the boutique," he explained, "we thought you deserved something special." One by one, my father handed every gift to Autumn. A new tablet for designing, a cashmere sweater, wireless headphones, a gift certificate for a day spa. With each present, my heart sank further, even as I maintained a smile and appropriate reactions. Finally, when all the presents had been distributed, I sat empty-handed, while Autumn was surrounded by opened gifts. The silence grew uncomfortable, as the reality became impossible to ignore. "Dad," Autumn finally asked, looking concerned, "did you forget Oakley's presents?" My father cleared his throat. and looked directly at me, his expression stern. "You did not earn anything this year. We do not reward failure in this family, Oakley. Throwing away a perfectly good career to chase some fantasy job, that is not something we celebrate." The words hit like physical blows. My mother looked away, unwilling to contradict him or come to my defense. Autumn's face registered shock, then embarrassment. "That is not fair," Autumn protested quietly. "Oakley is doing what makes her happy." "Life is not about happy," my father retorted. "It is about responsibility and success. Your sister used to understand that." I sat perfectly still, working to keep my expression neutral despite the storm of emotions inside me. 28 years of seeking approval, of trying to be enough, crystallized in that moment of complete rejection. "I understand," I said, finally, my voice surprisingly steady. "If you will excuse me, I need to use the restroom." I walked calmly up the stairs, each step measured and controlled, until I was safely behind the locked bathroom door, where no one could see the tears that finally escaped. The bathroom mirror reflected a face I barely recognized. Red-rimmed eyes stared back at me, but behind the hurt, I saw something else emerging. Determination. For 28 years, I had measured my worth through my parents' eyes, and in that moment of clarity, I realized how distorted that view had been. "You are not a failure," I whispered to my reflection. "You are just failing to be who they want you to be." The realization washed over me like a wave. The standards I had been held to were never about my success or happiness. They were about fulfilling my parents' vision of who I should be. Autumn was not favored because she was better than me. She was favored because she fit naturally into a role they found easy to love, while I was forever trying to earn what should have been freely given. I splashed cold water on my face and made a decision that would change everything. I was leaving, tonight. No more seeking approval that would never come. No more comparing myself to my sister. No more trying to earn love that should be unconditional. The house had quieted when I slipped from the bathroom to the guest room, where my overnight bag sat unpacked. I moved efficiently, gathering my belongings and adding the few items I kept at my parents' house. A photo album from college. A favorite sweater. The worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird that my 8th grade teacher had given me. From my purse, I took out a notepad and pen. What do you say in a letter like this? How do you compress a lifetime of unmet expectations and hurt into a few lines? I did not want anger to guide my words. This was not about punishment, but liberation. After several attempts, I wrote, "Mom and Dad, I am taking a step back to reassess our relationship. I love you both, but I cannot continue trying to earn your approval at the expense of my own happiness and self-worth. I am proud of my choice to pursue journalism. I am good at it, and it fulfills me in ways finance never did. I hope someday you can see that. I will be in touch when I am ready. Love, Oakley. P.S. Please give my Christmas gifts to Autumn. I packed light." I folded the note and placed it on the perfectly made bed. For a moment, I hesitated, wondering if I was overreacting. Then I remembered my father's words. "You did not earn anything this year," and my resolve strengthened. Descending the stairs quietly, I could hear my parents and Autumn in the kitchen, their voices low. No one noticed as I slipped out the front door into the cold December night, closing it softly behind me. The snow had stopped, and the night was clear and frigid. Stars sparkled overhead in the vast darkness as I pulled my suitcase to my car and placed it in the trunk. The Christmas lights from neighboring houses cast multicolored reflections on the snow-covered lawn. I stood for a moment looking back at my childhood home, feeling both grief and strange relief. In my car, I turned the heat on full blast and pulled out my phone. It was just past 10:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and I was about to upend my entire life. I scrolled to Jackson's number and pressed call. Jackson had been my roommate sophomore year of college before he transferred to NYU. We had remained close friends despite the distance. "Oakley, Merry Christmas Eve. Are you calling from the family circus?" he answered cheerfully. "Jackson," my voice wavered slightly. "Can I stay with you for a while?" "In New York." The cheerfulness drained from his voice, replaced with concern. "What happened?" "I will explain everything when I get there, but I need to leave Boston, tonight." Without hesitation, he replied, "Of course. My couch is yours for as long as you need it. Text me when you are on the road. Okay. Thank you, I whispered gratitude, washing over me. The drive to New York would take about 4 hours in good conditions. Fortunately, the plows had cleared the main highways, and traffic was minimal on Christmas Eve. As I drove through the night, Christmas music playing softly on the radio, I reflected on the enormity of what I was doing. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself, not my parents' expectations. Not the safe, practical path. Not the endless quest for approval. Just me, Oakley, following my own compass. Somewhere around the Connecticut border, tears began flowing freely, not from sadness, but from release. Years of pent-up inadequacy and frustration poured out as the miles rolled by. By the time I reached the outskirts of New York City, I felt emptied and somehow lighter, as if I had shed a skin that never quite fit. The city glowed on the horizon, a constellation of human-made stars. Even at 3 a.m., on Christmas morning, New York pulsed with life. Taxicabs prowled the streets, late-night revelers staggered home, and early morning workers headed to their shifts. The anonymity of the city was exactly what I needed, a place where no one had preconceived notions of who I should be. Jackson lived in a fifth-floor walk-up in Brooklyn. He was waiting at the entrance when I arrived, wrapped in a heavy coat over pajamas, concern etched on his face. Without a word, he pulled me into a hug. "Welcome to your new beginning," he said, simply taking my suitcase. As the sun rose on Christmas morning, illuminating the unfamiliar skyline outside Jackson's window, I felt the first tentative stirrings of hope. I had no job in New York, minimal savings, and no clear plan beyond start over. But for the first time in memory, I was free to define success on my own terms. That freedom, I realized as I sipped coffee on Jackson's worn couch, was the greatest gift I could have given myself. The harsh January winds that whipped through New York City's concrete canyons matched the cold reality of my situation. I had left a stable life in Boston for a cramped corner of Jackson's living room, separated from his space by a hastily hung curtain. My savings would last 3 months at most, even with the drastically reduced expenses of crashing on his couch. Media jobs in this city are like designer sample sales. Jackson warned over cheap Chinese takeout our third night. Everyone fights for them, and most people leave empty-handed. He was right. My first 2 weeks of job hunting yielded nothing but automated rejection emails. My experience in finance meant nothing to news outlets, and my handful of articles from the Boston Herald barely registered as relevant experience. I applied for everything from copy editor to fact-checker to administrative assistant at every publication I could find. On a particularly discouraging day after my 12th rejection, Jackson found me staring dejectedly at my laptop. "Time for Plan B," he announced, tossing me a flyer for a networking event for media professionals. "I cannot crash that," I protested. "I am not a media professional." Yet he corrected. "You are not a media professional yet." The event was held in a trendy midtown bar where journalists, editors, and producers mingled over overpriced cocktails. I felt hopelessly out of place in my only professional outfit, nursing a single drink I could barely afford. An hour in, just as I was about to leave, I literally bumped into Marcus Reed, spilling his drink down the front of his shirt. "I am so sorry," I gasped, grabbing cocktail napkins to help. Marcus, I would later learn, was the executive producer for BNN, a smaller news network competing with the media giants. In his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and perpetually rumpled suits, he had a reputation for giving chances to unlikely candidates. "No harm done," he chuckled, waving away my apologies. "Not the first shirt I have ruined at one of these things." Marcus Reed. "Oakley Johnson," I replied, shaking his hand. "And I would offer to pay for dry cleaning, but honestly, I am between jobs right now." Something about my candor amused him. "What kind of job are you looking for?" "Oakley Johnson?" "Journalism. News reporting specifically. I have some experience with the Boston Herald, but not enough to get my foot in the door here." He studied me with shrewd eyes. "What makes you think you can make it in this business?" The question was direct, challenging, but not unkind. I took a deep breath and gave him the honest answer. "Because I gave up everything to pursue it. Because I believe stories matter, and because I am stubborn enough to keep trying even after everyone tells me I cannot." He laughed a genuine belly laugh that turned heads nearby. Well, that is either incredibly naive or exactly the attitude this industry needs more of. He pulled a business card from his pocket. Email me your resume tomorrow. We might have something at the entry level. The something turned out to be an assistant position to Rebecca Chen, BNN's most demanding producer. The job paid barely enough to cover my share of a tiny two-bedroom apartment in Astoria that I found with another struggling journalist, Zoe. My days consisted of coffee runs, fact-checking, transcribing interviews, and occasionally writing background briefs that no one read. Rebecca was exacting, critical, and rarely satisfied with my work during those first weeks. If you want to make it in this business, she told me, after ripping apart my first research brief, you need thicker skin and sharper instincts. Instead of being discouraged, I took her criticism as a challenge. I arrived earlier, stayed later, and studied everything about how BNN operated. I watched how the successful reporters structured their stories, how the anchors presented information, how producers like Rebecca shaped raw footage into compelling segments. My break came unexpectedly 2 months into the job. A local artist, who had gained attention for her controversial public installations, was scheduled for an interview, but the junior reporter assigned to it called in sick. The studio was already booked, and the artist was en route. Oakley can do it, Marcus suggested. When the crisis was discussed in the morning meeting, she has been studying our format for months. Rebecca looked skeptical. Have you ever conducted an on-camera interview before, she asked me? No, I admitted, but I have prepared for dozens of them, and I know this artist's work inside out. I had actually researched the artist the previous day for the background brief. Fine, Rebecca sighed, but I will be in your ear the whole time. One mistake, and we cut to commercial. The interview should have been a disaster. I was nervous, underprepared, and wearing an outfit cobbled together from borrowed pieces, since I did not own anything camera-ready. But something unexpected happened. When the cameras started rolling, I relaxed. Unlike the corporate world where I had always felt like an imposter, this felt natural. I asked questions that stemmed from genuine curiosity, rather than a prepared list. When the artist gave an evasive answer about her controversial funding sources, I circled back, naturally pressing for clarity without being aggressive. That was not terrible, Rebecca conceded afterward, which from her was high praise. You have a natural conversational style. Viewers respond to that authenticity. The segment aired that evening, and by the next morning the artist had posted positively about the interview on social media, appreciating the refreshing approach compared to her previous media appearances. Marcus called me into his office that afternoon. So assistant producer with some on-air responsibilities, he offered without preamble. Still entry-level pay, but your foot is officially in the door. My new role meant developing story ideas, researching backgrounds, and occasionally conducting interviews that the more established reporters did not want. I threw myself into every assignment, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Rebecca, initially skeptical, became an unexpected mentor. You have good instincts, she told me after I successfully navigated a particularly tricky interview with a local politician. But you need to trust them more. Stop second-guessing yourself. We developed a routine of constructive criticism sessions after each of my segments aired. She would point out every flaw in my delivery, my questioning, my research. Then just when I felt thoroughly demoralized, she would highlight one thing I had done well. That is what you build on, she would say. Everything else can be learned. My apartment in Astoria slowly transformed from a crash pad to a home. Zoe and I found free furniture on sidewalks, splurged on good coffee, and hosted cramped dinner parties for fellow media strivers. For the first time, I built friendships based on shared interests rather than shared history or obligation. I called Autumn monthly, careful to keep conversations light and avoid mentioning our parents. She told me they had been shocked by my departure, then angry, then concerned. They had tried calling, but I had changed my number when I moved to New York. They had even driven to Boston looking for me before Autumn finally told them I had moved. They miss you, she said during one call. Dad will never admit it, but he asks about you all the time. I am not ready, I told her honestly. I need to build something of my own first. 6 months into my new life, an opportunity arose that would change everything. Gerald Fisher, a Wall Street executive, had been implicated in a financial scandal involving millions in client funds. As a former finance professional, I understood the complex mechanisms of the fraud better than most reporters at BNN. "Let me interview him," I urged Rebecca. "I can ask questions other reporters would not think to ask." She hesitated. "This is high-profile Oakley, usually reserved for senior reporters." "Which is exactly why he will underestimate me," I countered. "He is expecting softball questions from reporters who do not understand finance. I know how people like him think." Whether it was my argument or simply lack of other options, Rebecca agreed. The interview was scheduled for the following week, giving me precious little time to prepare. I spent every waking hour researching Fisher's career, the details of the scandal, and the specific financial instruments involved. The morning of the interview, Rebecca pulled me aside. "Remember, this is not about showing how smart you are. It is about getting him to reveal something new." Fisher arrived with an entourage of lawyers and PR people who tried to set strict parameters for the interview. I smiled pleasantly and agreed to everything while knowing exactly which questions I would ask regardless. Once the cameras rolled, I started with easy questions about his background and career successes, lulling him into comfort. Then, without changing my friendly tone, I asked, "Can you explain why the Cayman Islands subsidiary transferred funds quarterly rather than monthly, like the domestic accounts?" The question was specific enough to catch him off guard. His momentary freeze, the quick glance at his lawyer, told viewers everything they needed to know before he even answered. The interview aired that evening and was picked up by national outlets the next day. My straightforward questioning style, combined with my understanding of the financial details, had extracted admissions that more aggressive reporters had failed to secure. By the next morning, my inbox was flooded with messages from other news organizations. Marcus called me into his office looking both pleased and concerned. "You are about to get poached by someone with deeper pockets," he said bluntly. "So here is my counter-offer, senior producer, with regular on-air segments, focusing on business and finance stories." The salary he named was double what I was currently making. "Why the sudden faith in me?" I asked. "Nothing sudden about it," he replied. "I have been waiting to see if you would stick it out or run back to your cushy finance job. You proved your commitment. Now we invest in you." As fall turned to winter, my role at BNN expanded. I developed a weekly segment called Financial Clarity that broke down complex economic news for average viewers. My background in finance, combined with my natural conversational style, created a niche that resonated with audiences tired of either oversimplified or overly technical financial reporting. November brought my first invitation to speak at a journalism conference. December brought a small but significant industry award for emerging talent in broadcast journalism. And with each success, I sent silent messages to my parents. "See me now. See what I built on my own." As Christmas approached again, Sandra Waters, BNN's Director of Special Programming, called me into a meeting. "We are planning a special for Christmas night," she explained. "Personal stories of resilience and reinvention. Would you be interested in hosting Lunat Relius Personal Stories? Interviewing people who have overcome obstacles and rebuilt their lives," I clarified. She nodded, then added, "And possibly sharing your own journey as part of it, from finance to journalism, walking away from security to pursue passion." I hesitated, knowing what she was really asking. My colleagues knew fragments of my story, but I had never publicly discussed leaving my family behind that Christmas Eve night. "It would resonate with viewers," Sandra continued, "especially those struggling with family tensions during the holidays." I thought about my parents who still watched BNN regularly, according to Autumn. I thought about the journey of the past year. The fear, the struggle, the growth, the triumph. Yes, I decided, I will do it. The Christmas special would air exactly 1 year after I walked out of my parents' house with a single suitcase. 1 year since I chose myself over their approval. 1 year of building a life that was authentically mine. As I left Sandra's office, I pulled out my phone and called Jackson. "Remember when you said your couch was my new beginning?" I asked when he answered. "You were right. And now I am about to tell the whole story on national television." "Are you ready for that?" he asked, knowing what it meant. I thought about my parents potentially watching, about finally being seen on my own terms. I have never been more ready for anything in my life. The 3 weeks leading up to the Christmas special transformed me from a behind-the-scenes producer who occasionally appeared on camera to the face of BNN's holiday programming. Promotional spots featuring my image began airing during primetime slots. The marketing department created graphics with my photo and the tagline, "Home for the Holidays Stories of Reinvention with Oakley Johnson." "We are positioning this as your official launch. As a network personality," Sandra explained during a production meeting. "The audience response to your segments has been exceptionally positive. People trust you. You come across as authentic in an industry often perceived as artificial." The pressure to deliver something meaningful weighed heavily on me. This was not just another assignment. It was my story, my pain, my triumph being packaged for public consumption. I insisted on maintaining editorial control over how my personal narrative would be presented. "No sob story," I told the writing team firmly. "This is about empowerment, not victimhood." The format we developed would feature 3 guests sharing their stories of personal reinvention interspersed with segments of my own journey. The climax would be my live address to the audience about choosing authentic paths even when those paths lead away from family expectations. My apartment, once sparsely furnished with secondhand finds, had gradually transformed into a space that reflected my emerging identity. A wall of bookshelves housed journalism, texts, and biographies of groundbreaking reporters. My desk overlooked the Manhattan skyline, a daily reminder of how far I had come. I had even splurged on a professional wardrobe worthy of an on-air personality, replacing the borrowed clothes and budget finds that had gotten me through my first months. The night before the final production meeting, Autumn called. We had maintained sporadic contact throughout the year, careful conversations that skirted around the family-sized hole in our relationship. "Mom saw a promo for your Christmas special," she said without preamble. "She called me crying." My stomach tightened. "What did she say?" "That she's proud of you. That she always watches your segments. That she wishes you would call." I sat down heavily on my couch. "And Dad?" Autumn hesitated. "He is more complicated. You know him. He will not admit he was wrong, but he has your segments recorded on the DVR. I caught him watching your Fisher interview twice." The information settled uncomfortably in my chest. For a year I had imagined them dismissing my career, using my departure as further evidence of my failure. The image of my father rewatching my work, of my mother crying at a 15-second promotional spot, did not fit neatly into the narrative I had constructed. "Will they watch the Christmas special?" I asked. "They never miss BNN's holiday programming," Autumn confirmed. "It is tradition." After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the darkened window. The woman looking back at me was not the same person who had driven away from Boston a year ago. My hair was styled in a confident bob, instead of the long, unassuming style I had maintained to please my mother. My posture was straight, unburdened by the constant weight of seeking approval. My eyes held a clarity that came from knowing exactly who I was and what I had overcome. The final week before Christmas brought a flurry of activity. Technical rehearsals, promotional appearances, final edits on the pre-recorded segments. I worked closely with Rebecca, who had transitioned from skeptical boss to trusted colleague. "Are you ready to expose this much of yourself?" she asked during our final review. "Once it airs, you cannot take it back." "I spent 28 years hiding parts of myself," I replied. "I am done with that." The day before the broadcast, a package arrived at the studio. Inside was a small wrapped gift and a card signed by Autumn. The gift was a delicate silver necklace with a pendant shaped like a key. The card read simply, "For unlocking your true self. Proud of you, Love A." I fastened it around my neck, immediately touching the key pendant as a talisman throughout final preparations. Christmas Eve arrived with a blanket of fresh snow covering the city. I arrived at the studio 4 hours before broadcast, settling into the hair and makeup chair with a strange sense of calm. This night was the culmination of a year's journey, the period at the end of one chapter and the capital letter beginning the next. The set had been transformed for the special. Instead of the usual hard news desk, a living room arrangement with a tasteful Christmas tree created a warm, intimate atmosphere. The 3 guests, a former addict who became a counselor, an executive who left corporate life to start a nonprofit, and a woman who rebuilt her life, after leaving an abusive marriage, arrived for final preparations. 30 minutes to air the floor, director announced as the studio audience filed in. I retreated to a quiet corner, phone in hand, contemplating a call I had been avoiding. After a moment's hesitation, I dialed Autumn. "Is everyone gathered for Christmas Eve?" I asked when she answered. "Yes. We just finished dinner. Dad is setting up for the gift exchange." Her voice lowered. "They have presents for you under the tree, just in case." My throat tightened. "Tell them." I paused, unsure what message I wanted to convey. "Tell them I will be thinking of them tonight." "They will be watching," she assured me. "We all will." As the countdown to broadcast began, I took my position on set, adjusting the key pendant at my neck. The red light on camera 1 illuminated, and suddenly I was speaking to millions of viewers across the country, including the family I had left behind exactly 1 year ago. Good evening, and welcome to Home for the Holidays Stories of Reinvention. I am Oakley Johnson. My voice was steady, confident. Tonight, we will meet individuals who found the courage to rewrite their life stories when the original drafts were not serving them. Their journeys echo my own in many ways. The first 2 segments flowed smoothly as planned. The guests shared their stories eloquently, and I guided the conversations with empathy and insight. During the second commercial break, Sandra gave me a thumbs up from the control room. "You are killing it," she mouthed. Then came the segment I had both dreaded and anticipated, my own story. The cameras focused solely on me as the studio lights dimmed slightly, creating an intimate atmosphere. 1 year ago tonight, I stood in my parents' living room as they handed every Christmas gift to my sister. "You did not earn anything this year," my father told me, punishment, for leaving a lucrative finance career to pursue journalism. I spoke without notes, the words flowing from a place of hard-won wisdom, rather than lingering hurt. That night I packed a single suitcase and drove to New York, leaving behind not just my family but the version of myself that existed solely to earn their approval. The journey from that moment to this broadcast has been the most challenging and rewarding year of my life. I shared the struggles of starting over, the rejections, the small victories, the gradual building of a new identity based on authentic passion rather than external expectations. The greatest gift we can give ourselves is permission to be who we truly are, even when that person does not match others' expectations. Sometimes walking away is not an act of anger, but an act of self-love. As I spoke, I imagined my parents in their living room, watching me tell our private pain to the world. Were they angry, embarrassed, or could they finally see me, truly see me through the lens of the camera? To anyone watching who feels trapped between who you are and who others need you to be, I want you to know this. The journey to authenticity is difficult, lonely at times, but ultimately worth every sacrifice. You deserve to be the author of your own story. The final segment brought all 3 guests back for a roundtable discussion about moving forward after difficult choices. As we approached the end of the broadcast, I delivered my closing address directly to camera 1, imagining I was speaking not to millions, but to just 2 people in Boston. Reinvention is not about rejecting our past, but integrating it into a more authentic future. The people I left behind a year ago remain part of my story. The pain of that night shaped me, but it does not define me. What defines us ultimately is the courage to become who we are meant to be, even when that journey takes us down unexpected paths. I touched the key pendant at my neck. Wherever you are watching from tonight, I hope you find the key to your own authentic life. Thank you for sharing this Christmas Eve with us. From all of us at BNN, may your holidays be filled with truth, courage, and genuine connection. As the credits rolled and the studio lights brightened, I exhaled fully for what felt like the first time in hours. Production assistants rushed forward with congratulations. Sandra gave me a quick hug, and social media alerts began pinging on my phone as viewers responded to the broadcast. Among the notifications was a text from Autumn. They watched every minute. Mom cried through most of it. Dad was quiet, but he did not leave the room. They saw you, Oakley. They really saw you. In that moment, standing in the bright lights of the studio, while snow fell gently outside, I realized I had accomplished something more significant than career success. I had reclaimed my narrative. Whatever happened next with my family, It would happen on new terms, terms that honored the person I had become. As I gathered my things to leave the studio, Rebecca approached with an envelope. "From Marcus and the executive team," she explained. "Consider it your Christmas bonus." Inside was a contract for my own weekly segment and a substantial salary increase. The memo line read simply, "Because you earned it." The morning after the broadcast, I woke to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window and the distant sounds of New York celebrating Christmas. My phone had been buzzing consistently since the special aired, colleagues offering congratulations, viewers sharing their own stories of reinvention, friends expressing pride in my courage. I scrolled through the messages feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Telling my story had been both terrifying and liberating, like lancing a wound that had been festering for years. The relief was palpable, a physical lightness in my chest where a heavy weight had long resided. Among the notifications was a text from an unknown number. "Oakley, it's Mom. Autumn gave me your number. Please call when you can. Please." My heart raced as I stared at the screen. A year of silence, and now, this simple request. I set the phone down and made coffee, giving myself time to process. The smell of fresh beans filled my apartment as I contemplated the possible conversations that might follow if I returned the call. Before I could decide, another text arrived, this one from Autumn. "Merry Christmas, sis. Any chance you could meet me for coffee? I'm in New York. Just me, I promise." This was unexpected. Autumn had never visited me in New York, always claiming she was too busy with the boutique. The fact that she had traveled on Christmas Day seemed significant. We arranged to meet at a small cafe near Central Park that remained open for the holiday. The city had a peaceful quality on Christmas morning, fewer people, less noise, a collective pause in the usual frenetic energy. I arrived early, securing a corner table with a view of the snow-dusted park. Autumn entered in a flurry of cold air and nervous energy, her cheeks pink from the winter chill. She looked both familiar and strange. My sister, yet somehow different from the girl who had sat surrounded by gifts a year ago. "You were amazing last night," she said, after ordering coffee. "The whole country got to see what I have always known. How incredible you are." "Thank you for coming," I replied, genuinely touched by her presence. "It means a lot that you traveled all this way." She fidgeted with her napkin. "I needed to see you in person. After watching the broadcast, Mom and Dad were. It was intense. Oakley, Dad kept saying he never meant to drive you away. Mom just kept crying and saying she failed you." I had imagined many reactions from my parents over the past year. Anger, dismissal, even indifference. But not this raw regret Autumn described. They watched me on television to finally understand how I felt I could not keep the edge from my voice. "No," Autumn said quietly. "They have known for months that they made a terrible mistake. The broadcast just made it impossible to avoid facing it directly." She reached across the table to take my hand. "They have been trying to figure out how to reach you, how to apologize, without seeming to expect forgiveness." "And what about you?" I asked. "You were there that night too." Her eyes filled with tears. "I have felt guilty every day for not standing up for you more strongly, for accepting those gifts when you got nothing, for being complicit in their favoritism all those years. You were as trapped in their dynamics as I was," I said, surprised by the forgiveness in my own voice. We both played the roles we were assigned. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Really talked in ways we never had growing up. Autumn shared her perspective on our childhood, how she had often felt inadequate compared to my achievements, how she had sensed our parents' unfair treatment but had been too young to challenge it, how she had missed me desperately this past year. "They want to see you," she finally said. "Not to make excuses or to try to pull you back into old patterns, just to apologize and maybe start rebuilding something new." I stared out at the park, watching families stroll together through the snow. "I am not sure I am ready." "You don't have to be," Autumn assured me. "You get to set the pace here. But I thought you should know that the door is open whenever you decide to walk through it." We parted with a long hug on the sidewalk outside the cafe, promising to maintain our reconnection regardless of what happened with our parents. As I watched her hail a taxi, I felt a subtle shift in my perspective. The anger that had fueled much of my reinvention had quieted, making space for something more nuanced. Back in my apartment, I pulled out my phone and looked at my mother's text again. Before I could overthink it, I pressed call. She answered immediately. Oakley. Her voice was tentative, hopeful. Merry Christmas, Mom. I said, surprised by how steady my voice remained. Oh, sweetheart. She began crying softly. We watched you last night. You were so poised, so articulate. I am so proud of what you have accomplished. Thank you, I replied, unwilling to make this easy for her, but also unwilling to be cruel. Your father wants to speak to you. Is that okay? Before I could answer, I heard shuffling as the phone changed hands. Oakley. My father's voice, usually so commanding, sounded uncertain. I saw your program. And I prompted when he fell silent. And I was wrong, he said simply. Not just about that night, but about so many things. I confused my expectations with your happiness. I valued the wrong measures of success. The admission so plainly stated caught me off guard. My father had never acknowledged being wrong about anything in my memory. It took me leaving for you to see, that I asked. It took you succeeding brilliantly on your own terms, he corrected. Seeing you on that broadcast so confident and purposeful, it was like meeting you for the first time. The real you, not the daughter I tried to shape. We talked for nearly an hour. There were difficult moments, old hurts, acknowledged patterns identified. But there was also a new openness, a willingness to listen that had never characterized our relationship before. Would you consider coming home? My mother asked when she got back on the phone. Not permanently, of course. Just to visit. When you are ready. I thought about the key pendant Autumn had given me, about the symbolism of unlocking new possibilities. Not yet, I told her honestly. But maybe soon. This is just the beginning of a new conversation between us. After hanging up, I stood by my window, looking out at the city that had become my home. The journey from last Christmas to this one had transformed me in ways I was still discovering. I had walked away from conditional love to find my authentic self, only to discover that sometimes walking away creates the possibility for something healthier to emerge. My phone pinged with a message from Sandra. Ratings just came in. Highest viewership for a Christmas special in BNN history. Your story resonated, Oakley. People saw themselves in you. I smiled, touching the key pendant at my neck. The greatest gift of this journey had not been professional success, though that was deeply satisfying. The true gift was the freedom to be fully myself, to speak my truth without fear, and to discover that authenticity creates its own kind of belonging. As snow began falling again outside my window, I felt a profound sense of peace. The year ahead held new challenges and opportunities, a growing career, a healing family relationship, and countless stories yet to tell. But for the first time, I would face them as the complete, uncompromised version of myself. The painful Christmas of rejection had led 1 year later to a Christmas of recognition, not just from viewers across the country, but finally from the people whose approval I had sought for so long. More importantly, I had recognized my own worth independent of anyone else's validation. That recognition, I realized as I watched the snow transform the city into a winter wonderland, was the most valuable gift I could have received. If you have ever had to walk away from something or someone to find yourself, I would love to hear your story in the comments below. Did my journey resonate with your own experiences? Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to our greatest growth. Please like this video. If it touched something in you, subscribe to join our community of authentic storytellers, and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by others' expectations. Thank you for being part of my journey. And remember, the key to happiness often lies in having the courage to write your own story, even when others try to hold the pen. Merry Christmas, and may the coming year bring you the courage to be authentically, unapologetically you.